Bitcoiners. I hope you're doing great. I hope you're loving your life. I'm loving my life. Things are going awesome. Who could complain on a day like today? Greg, best title award goes to you, Nolan. Thank you. Thank you. I take a lot of pleasure in those compliments, Greg. Thank you. I spend a few minutes with the titles every morning, and when they hit, they hit. I love it. Robert, good morning. Have Sats, Will Hotto. Awesome. Ben, good morning, fam. David, good morning, fellow plebs. Indeed, we're going to have a bunch of plebs coming in here this morning. Now, just give me 1 second because obviously my stupid iCloud decided to not update my album with my notes. I got to get into printing again. I think this iCloud thing is such a pain in the ass. So we're probably going to need to go back to printing, which means I'll have to shoot another printer eventually. But unfortunately, everywhere I'm going in the next few months doesn't have guns. You know, what kind of places do you go without guns? So I got to go to places without guns because it's nicer and the weather's good. But I can't shoot a printer, guys. It's going to be a problem. What just happened? I heard my audio get effed for a second. Just a moment. Am I still coming in on this? So I think it might have been the mic yesterday because it repeated itself. I did Simply Bitcoin yesterday, guys. And if you didn't see it, go have a look. It was a fun episode with those folks. We talked about the Bitcoiner's Guide to NPC Management. This stupid fucking thing. So audio's good? Okay, good, Robert. Yeah, I'm using these AirPods today because that's what I had to use yesterday because this thing is getting the Russian bot influence. So we don't want Russians listening to our show. We don't want you guys to have to listen to Russian unless you speak Russian. Otherwise, it's annoying, right? All right, just give me 1 more second here, team. For some reason, the album, no matter what I do, has decided it just is not going to update. So it's a fucking piece of shit. Apple. Garbage. I'm going to have to get, if they take X off, we have to get rid of all the Apple stuff. All right. We got to get rid of all of it. If they can't figure this shit out, all of it's gone. Fuck them. Pardon the swearing if you have folks around this morning who are children who don't like swearing. All right. So stupid. God. All right. Well, let's acknowledge the sun is up despite Apple not working at all, you know, and contributing to some of the worst versions of this fucking podcast we've ever done. But that's okay, right? The sun's up. Bitcoin's running. All that's left for us to do is have a coffee and shit on Apple. Motherfuckers. This is what's going on, all right? This is what happens. Let me just show you. It's boring, but I got to tell you. So I create albums, right? So I create albums. Those albums are, I put the date, right? And then I put the notes that I like that will be useful for today so I can refer to it. Now, what they do is they come up in these shared albums here, right? They come up as a shared album. But as you see, it's decided no matter what I fucking do, it won't put fucking December 2nd, which I made 30 fucking minutes ago, and it won't fucking put it in. Fuck! Hate it. All right, let's just get into the Moscow time, guys. All right, let's just do some Moscow times. Because this shit's not gonna fucking work. God damn it. Get out of the way. Read it off my phone like an idiot. All right. So at least the Moscow time is funny today, right? At least we've got fucking good Moscow time. All right. All right. Do it live. Do it fucking live. All right. We're doing it live. Here we go. This is great. This is from the Telegraph. All right. You know, those British people in the running with the Canadians for the dumbest people in the world. Here we go. I love how they, this is one of the stupid things about British English, right? That I can't stand. It's different than American English. They make math plural. That alone could make them the dumbest people in the world. Plural math, right? So forcing maths is what they say. Forcing maths on the population is straight out of China's playbook. Forcing maths. They should force some better English. On the English, I know what I'm saying. I'm aware. Rishi Sunak's plans to extend numeracy lessons are more likely to humiliate and discourage school children than prepare them for adulthood. All right. There you go. That's what they got. Now we got some COVID stuff, right? Peter Hotez in the news. What does Hotez have to say to us? You guys remember who Peter Hotez is, right? He's the morbidly obese guy who's trying to tell us all how to be healthy, right? So he's the morbidly obese guy with a super paley skin, right? Like the skin is not working, probably got some liver scarring, just looks like a tub of shit, right? So he's there, and Hotez says to us that disease X is coming, and it'll be worse than COVID-19, all right? So he says, we have a likelihood that new pandemic threats that people call disease X are going to be arising. I wrote for the Houston Chronicle a couple of months back that COVID-19 is just the warm-up act. And of course, that's what the Mail Online in the UK is saying. Not new COVID. CDC says it's tracking a new coronavirus variant that has tripled in a month, but is still mild and not more likely to kill. So it's another one of these things where you don't know you have it and nobody's actually dying, but it's a pandemic. We love it. Thanks, Hotez. Why don't you work on your liver disease? This is from Canada, the Canadian Human Rights Commission, right? So these are, when we see Javier Milei going around just saying, I'm going to get rid of this, I'm going to get rid of that, this is shit, this is crap, right? This is one of those ones that we need a Milei situation in Canada because we have this Human Rights Commission that's been around for a long time, right? And here's what they say. Canadian Human Rights Commission report says Christmas is a discriminatory holiday. It's discriminatory. The report says Canada's identity as a settler colonial state is a chief reason for its religious intolerance. Let's just drop these fucking losers from space. All of them. Please don't discriminate. I'm discriminating against anyone who does shit like this. Get them on a rocket, put them in space, and just kick them the fuck out. All right? Go. We got to get rid of you. And now we have one of the better ones we've ever found, right? This is one of the greatest Moscow Time headlines you're ever going to see. It is another one of these ones that's in the running to one day be in a museum, to one day just be hung, right, on a wall somewhere to say, this is what we went through. This is what military-grade psychological operations look like, right? So this is from our favorite, and she's helped contribute to the show many times. Her name's Annie Lowry. Annie writes that inflation is your fault. People are so mad about high prices. Why do they keep buying things? Fuck you, stupid shits. Why do you keep buying food? You morons. You're going to cause these prices to go up. You got to stop eating, guys. Stop eating. Don't eat food. It's your fault. We're going to have to print more money because we won't stop eating, right? So if we don't stop eating, right, it's going to continue. So you dumb shit, you stupid asshole, sitting there eating, right, buying stuff, causing the prices to go up. Disgusting. Disgusting. The Atlantic, thank you for your contribution. I bet you Steve Jobs is somewhere and he's just so happy that his wife bought The Atlantic. He's probably somewhere saying, wow, all that work, all that effort to destabilize systems, to change the world, and what do I get with my money? I get Disney stock and fucking Atlantic. Now, you got to wonder about this Atlantic thing, right? And I've wondered about it for a while. Steve Jobs' wife doesn't seem like a dumb idiot, right? She doesn't. I read the Walter Isaacson book. She seemed fine, right? So why does a woman like that, who was married to Steve Jobs and probably knows better, why does she end up owning The Atlantic? And why does she let The Atlantic become one of the worst purveyors of the mind virus in the world? Now, I'm not a mind reader of Steve Jobs' ex-wife. I don't know what's going on in her brain. Maybe she is a dumb idiot. Maybe she's an idiot. But if she's an idiot, then Jeff Bezos would also have to be an idiot, right? Because Jeff Bezos did the same thing with his money, right? Jeff Bezos, one of the best businessmen ever, right? We can say that, right? Jeff Bezos, whether you like him or not, it doesn't matter. He created one of the most amazing products in the world. Amazon is one of the best software products I've ever used. And by that, I mean, it just works, right? Like I'm not like wowed by Amazon, but it doesn't change every 2 minutes. I don't have to relearn some interface. Like I go on YouTube these days and they've changed everything in the studio, in the video. It's still a good product, but I had to relearn a bunch of stuff. Things are moving around on my screen. It used to be I went there to check stuff. Now it's over there. They're consolidating links and buttons. They're doing all the typical shit that software companies do, right? They change the platform. Apple is terrible at that, right? You think you know how to use it, and then all of a sudden, you know what they fucking did at Apple recently that is mind-boggling. Like it's enough, even if they aren't part of this, even if they don't get rid of X, it might be enough to get rid of it. They took off control. Imagine this. They took off control of the hotspot. So now you don't get to choose whether or not your hotspot is on. Other people can just join if they already have the key and all that stuff. So this is a problem for me because my kids have iPads and I'll try and be driving and they'll be leeching off of my data and I'll turn it off. It doesn't work anymore. Another one of those things that I'm sure if Steve Jobs was alive, whoever did that is going up to space, not because of a Nuremberg thing. He's just going to be so angry that he would kill people for having done that to his product because it's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life, like next level stupid. Anyway, let's go back to Jeff Bezos for a second, right? We've talked about this for a while. How does a guy like Jeff Bezos, one of the smartest people ever, right? One of the greatest businesses ever, how does he end up owning the Washington Post? And how does he say, I got a good idea. I'm going to get into the newspaper business and I'm going to lose $100 million a year, right? Because that's what they lose over at the Washington Post. They lose $100 million a year. Well, I don't know. Now, he can burn it. It's true. It's true. He's rich enough to just say $100 million a year. I don't care, right? But does that really sound like it makes any sense, right? Because you'd say, oh, it's for the prestige, maybe. The Washington poop, right, isn't like this thing where you get ubiquitous prestige. Anyone who knows what's going on in the world knows who really owns it. It's not Jeff Bezos, right? They know what's going on with this stuff. So even though he technically owns the thing, I don't think he's out there telling them what to do on a daily basis. Nor do I think he's necessarily happy with his purchase or is guiding it the way he wants. Now, I'm doing a bit of speculation and mind reading, but when I see Jeff Bezos owning it with this ridiculous business plan to lose $100 million a year, and then I look over at the Atlantic and I see Steve Jobs' ex-wife parked there, I say, well, was this really organic? Was it really Steve Jobs' wife saying, you know what, I'm going to buy a disreputable magazine that most Americans think is toilet paper, and I'm going to go on a prestige tour owning a shitty newspaper or a shitty magazine in this case? There's a missing piece there, right? And I think the missing piece is becoming more and more obvious. And what is the missing piece? It's blackmail. It's blackmail, right? We've been talking about blackmail for a long time. Now, you think, blackmail's around. I was mentioning yesterday that I think the reason why Joe Biden is the president of the United States and not a better candidate, let's say, right? Like why, in the same way, why does Jeff Bezos think the Washington Post is a good business? Why does Steve Jobs' ex-wife think that the Atlantic is a good business, right? Why would the Democrat Party think Joe Biden is the best candidate, right? Because they got real threats. His poll numbers are dropping like a rock. Looks like Trump's going to eat his lunch if things were done the way they were, if today was election day, I think, and there's paper ballots, I think Trump wins in one of the all-time landslides, right? Trump can go into public and get huge crowds and people go and see him. Joe Biden gets heckled everywhere he goes and doesn't even know what day it is. And we found out yesterday from that thing that went on the deal book, the New York Times summit. Remember the old speaker, the Republican speaker, Kevin McCarthy? He said that in private one-on-one meetings with Joe Biden, he needed to read from a cue card because he can't go into a meeting one-on-one and just talk, right? He needs to be prompt engineered. He needs his talking points and he needs someone to hold his hand, right? Because he's got good days and bad, I bet. So why is he still there? They could find a better candidate for sure. And we know the Newsom thing, right? There's people being put in place, but still, it looks like the insistence on Biden is simply because he is the most blackmailable candidate, which means he's the most controllable, right? So because he's so blackmailable, he's so controllable, which to me explains why he's there. And it also explains why Jeff Bezos has got the Washington Post. It also explains why Steve Jobs' wife is in the Atlantic. And it's explaining more and more things, right? This blackmail thing might be at a scale that would make most of the things that make no sense to us in the world make sense suddenly, right? If you put that and you use that to solve for X, solve for the unknown, for motivations, incentives, all that stuff, you can start to see very quickly that blackmail is a major tool that made this whole fiat industrial complex, military industrial complex, censorship industrial complex perpetuate forward. And so the Atlantic out there running inflation stuff, but it gets even worse. We have a perfect example of what happened. And weirdly, the simulation is just winking at us throughout of it. So if you remember Derek Chauvin, the guy who was next to George Floyd when he overdosed from fentanyl a couple of years ago, and was wrestling him down and pinning him and putting pressure on his neck, that guy, Derek Chauvin, who of course was convicted of murder for what happened, and we've seen autopsy stuff was altered and all of that. We've covered that many times here, right? The autopsy, the pressure, all of these things. Well, Derek Chauvin was stabbed multiple times on Black Friday. So the fella came out, and now the guy who did the stabbing has been arrested, right? And here's what he says. Derek Chauvin was stabbed 22 times in prison last week, right? And the inmate who carried out the stabbing told investigators that he did it on Black Friday as a symbolic connection to the Black Lives Matter movement. Okay, that's what he said. What else about this guy did we learn about who stabbed him? Well, there's some few interesting things here, right? So Jack Posobiec writes the following. He says, we found out from Alpha News and from an old LA Times article, all right? The guy who did the stabbing, his name is John Tursak, has been charged with attempted murder in the prison stabbing of Derek Chauvin. So he stabbed him 22 times, right? But that same fella, it turns out, if you go back in time, if you go back to the year 2000 in the LA Times, it turns out that Mr. Tursak was a former FBI informant who got 30 years in prison. Yeah, Tursak. Yeah, he's a Tursak guy. A former Mexican mafia member who admitted carrying out a number of crimes while working as an undercover FBI informant was sentenced Monday in Los Angeles federal court to 30 years in prison. We have a few other people sort of commenting on this story. It's not just that, right? Let me find the other ones. I had 2 or 3 versions of this, but because I can't look on my big screen, I've got to fuck around with this little fucking screen. Here, Mike Ben says, what? Intelligence fingerprints on a plot to kill a target using low-level Mexican street muscle and mafia group the CIA has long protected? Why? That's never happened before, Mike Ben Cyber says. Obviously, I have no idea what happened in the Chauvin stabbing, and it could be a simple crime. But between the FBI informant and Mexican gang links and weird threats to Ray Epps from the Sinaloa cartel, the CIA's top squad in Mexico, I'm just on edge. We joke. Now, we know the following too. Colin Rugg wrote, the man who stabbed Chauvin was an FBI informant. How ironic. Chauvin was stabbed 22 times with a knife that was crafted by Tursak. This is where it gets interesting. Tursak was in prison after being found guilty of racketeering and conspiring to kill a gang rival. Before that, he worked as an FBI informant against the Mexican mafia organization. When being sentenced in 2001, Tursak admitted, right? So this is going back to that 2000 article from the Los Angeles Times, right? When being sentencing, he admitted that he carried out crimes while working undercover as an informant to the FBI. And here's the important quote from 20-something years ago in the LA Times. He goes, I didn't commit those crimes for kicks. I did them because I had to if I wanted to stay alive. I told that to the FBI agents, and they said, do what you have to do. So that's what's going on. So we got a blackmail guy. So this blackmail thing, right? This blackmail thing, we saw it with Jack Ruby in the assassination of Lee Harvey Oswald, right? Jack Ruby was a low-level criminal that worked for LBJ for years. And the reason why Richard Nixon told Roger Stone that LBJ killed Kennedy was because he recognized Jack Ruby from years earlier, not even related. When something happened and LBJ said, you got to meet some of my local people, because all these people were involved in some sketchy shit, right? Even Nixon, right? So Nixon recognized Jack Ruby when he killed Lee Harvey Oswald as an LBJ guy. And so when Roger Stone asks LBJ, or asks Nixon who killed Kennedy, his answer was, well, LBJ and I both wanted to be president, but I wasn't willing to kill for it, right? So that was his answer. So that was what Roger Stone says was proof that Nixon believed LBJ was the main guy behind it, which is why Roger Stone wrote a book about LBJ being the main keystone player in the assassination plot. A little bit like Joe Biden is currently the keystone when it comes to this current version of the blackmail industrial complex, with the kid, with the CIA, with the Burisma, with the China, with the elections now, which is why, of course, Biden continues to say that he did his campaign for Charlottesville, which everyone knows is a complete and total scam, right? Well, not everybody, but it was on Bill Maher. Even, most liberals still think it's a real thing that Trump. Could you imagine that the amount of gaslighting in the world means that, almost half of Americans believe that they had a president who encouraged Nazis. That's what they believe, right? Which is crazy. But it gets worse, right? It gets worse. So Tucker Carlson has been on a tour lately, and Tucker got into a bit of this blackmail stuff too. So here's what he told Roseanne Barr. I'm going to write to Roseanne Barr to get her to come to Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville. I think Roseanne would be a great speaker. We're hot on Tucker, by the way. We're pretty close to Tucker right now. It happened this week. So with all of this stuff he's got, and by the way, I don't think Tucker is going to be the vice president. It would be stupid. Trump should never make him vice president. It would be very, very dumb. Why import Tucker's problems into the Trump campaign? Trump has enough trouble. He doesn't need Tucker's problems. Now, I love Tucker, but it's not a value add to Trump. Trump gets the Tucker people anyway, right? And Tucker, of course, saying, that the Mar-a-Lago raid was the moment at which he became a Trump supporter, saying that corporate media can't be the ones who determine who the president is. So interesting stuff. So this is what Tucker told Roseanne Barr, that former CIA director Mike Pompeo. So just imagine what Trump was actually up against in Trump version 1, right? Remember Rod Rosenstein, space drop guy? Mike Pompeo, space drop. What's the other one that arrested Arthur Hayes? Bill Barr, that fat, pardon me, don't want to do that. Don't want to insult that. We got to kill him. He's got to be dropped from space, right? These are absolute criminals. So here's what Tucker says about Julian Assange, right? So this is the Julian Assange conversation, and this is Mike Pompeo. So it turns out he told Roseanne that Pompeo tried to have Assange murdered in jail. They are torturing him to death in front of all of us. Mike Pompeo tried to have him murdered, and that's a criminal act. He's not even charged with a crime in the United States. He tried to have Julian Assange murdered, poisoned in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, and that's a fact. So why would the Pompeo and the CIA want Assange dead? Epstein met with Joe Biden's current CIA chief, William Burns, after his child sex crime conviction. Also, when Epstein was serving his first jail sentence, which started in 2006, he sent his bodyguard to CIA headquarters for an alleged special training course. The bodyguard was given a book with a message to be delivered to Epstein, according to Bradley Edwards' book, Relentless Pursuit. Edwards is, where am I here? Edwards is the attorney who has represented dozens of Epstein victims. Furthermore, Assange released the Podesta emails exposing Pizzagate. Jeffrey Epstein is Pizzagate, which I think is more and more obvious, right? So it looks like this blackmail thing goes as deep as you can imagine and is probably the reason or the thing that would make much more of our world make sense to all of us, right? So if you put blackmail and use it to solve for X, you can actually start determining a lot of this stuff. It's fascinating that we now see that the blackmail piece has been instrumental in so much stuff and is probably one of the big revelations we're going to have through 2024. So it's another reason why 2024 is going to be the absolute best, because we're going to find out, I think, just how deep the blackmail goes, how long it's been around. I suspect blackmail has been the main prompt engineering mechanism used to control most people in the world since the 1960s, at least, right? I think the Kennedy assassination is part and parcel of the blackmailers taking over, right? Once they were able to destroy a president using these blackmail tactics, Jack Ruby being a blackmailable person, just think about what they got away with, right? In broad daylight, they had Jack Ruby go in and kill the only suspect, and they were just like, oh, he's a patriot. That's the explanation for Jack Ruby, that he's a fucking patriot. Oh, he's a patriot. He loved Kennedy. No, he was a stooge working for LBJ, right? According to many credible people, such as President Richard Nixon. So amazingly, we're seeing that this blackmail thing, right, is a major part of what's going on, and the lies that have come from the blackmail really let us know what kind of world we live in, and let us know what Bitcoiners are up against, right? This is what we're up against. The blackmail is on both sides. It's everywhere. The blackmail is on both sides. The uniparty stays in line because of the blackmail. Now, who's in charge of all the blackmail? I don't know, right? I don't know. I don't know what's going on with any of that stuff. Don't know, right? It looks pretty bad. It looks like it's pervasive. Who's on top of it all? I don't know if anyone is, right? It just could be a big NFL competition of blackmailers, and the blackmailed, and there's competing tribes inside of it. I don't know. No one, it's difficult to tell, but we see the blackmail is throughout there, right? So Tucker also went on, so also had a lot of other things to say just about the world going round, in particular, the news coverage pieces and advertisements, right? So he was on the All In podcast talking about corporate advertisers. So yeah, again, let just go back to the simulation stuff. We get Black Friday, we get blackmail, and then, of course, don't forget, we get Elon the other day with the Go Fuck You thing. The Go Fuck You thing was directed at blackmail, right? That was blackmail. He was saying, you're going to blackmail me with money? I'm not just, he didn't have to say it, right? But, and very clever of him not to say I'm the richest person in the world. We all know that, right? But he let us fill in the blanks. You're gonna blackmail me with money, right? No. So of course that didn't work. But this advertising thing is an important thing, right? So he's talking about blackmail and advertising now. We see here Tucker highlighted that big pharma constitutes 75% of TV ads in 2020. Then delved into COVID, lockdowns, January 6th, and the war in Ukraine. He says it not only exists, it defines news coverage, especially on pharma, because pharma is the biggest advertiser on television. If Pfizer is sponsoring your show, you are not going to question the vax. And that's why they are the biggest advertiser, so they can shape news coverage. Tucker explains that he was not surprised by his firing because it is implicitly understood within the industry that sharing opinions that conflict with corporate advertisers eventually gets you fired. I had a lot of opinions that were unpopular with the people who might have influenced my show getting canceled, but I was not shocked at all. You can't give the finger to everybody and persist in a corporate job, which aligns with what Glenn Greenwald's been saying recently, right? And Elon Musk, of course, illustrating that modern journalism, once a check on established power, is now controlled by the corporate advertisers. And indeed, right, we see the story of what happened with X and everyone saying, oh, anti-Semitic content, right? And of course, everyone pointing out there's more, like, when are you going to cut your ads to TikTok? There's way more anti-Semitic stuff there. We've seen clearly that watching TikTok correlates to having anti-Semitic points of view and to being pro-Hamas and all of that stuff. Now, I get why people would be on that side, right? I'm not on that side, but I get why people would. And if I watched enough content on TikTok of dying babies and all that shit, my opinions would probably change. Right now, I did a thing from the very start of this that I don't actually consume any information about what's going on in Gaza. I haven't seen a picture. I don't watch any of that stuff, right? None of it. It causes brain damage. Why would I watch? What Elon had to go do in Israel last week, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't go look at pictures of a murder scene or anything like that. Nothing. You just get haunted and get brain damage from that. I've seen a few people die live in my life. I've seen a suicide on a subway in Korea. I won't tell you what kind of nightmares I've had. Watermelon stuff, like, it's unbelievable, right? I don't want anyone to have these pictures in their brain. They're terrible. So I stay away from this type of stuff, right? So I've said before, I'm not an expert on what's going on over there, and I understand the history, but I don't care about the history. And the news getting shaped the way it has on mainstream media, whatever, is nothing compared to what we've seen on TikTok, right? We've known for a long time that TikTok has the heat button. They can hit heat on anything, right? If you look at the Dylan, they broke down Dylan Mulvaney's stuff on the Daily Wire. Dylan Mulvaney, for a long time, Dylan Mulvaney was just playing around with gay stuff and on TikTok, and just playing around with the gender fluid business. And he has no traction until he really goes full into the woman stuff. And all of a sudden it starts getting boosted. Right now, I don't know what happened inside. But you can see him, Dylan, in the videos, and this was broken down by Tim Pool and a few others yesterday, sort of progressively responding to the thrill he's getting from the boost he's getting from the TikTok algorithm. And you can see at one point a type of mental crisis where Dylan and the girl are talking as a schizophrenic person. Now, I don't, who knows what's going on, but he's telling, crying at one moment, telling Dylan to shut up, and like really like disturbing stuff, right? Where you're saying, wait a minute, like, is this natural? Or has someone had a heat button pushed in their own brain and turning them into someone who is loving the success and reach and all of that stuff, so much so that it's altering their subconscious, right? So it's pretty dark stuff, right? So the advertising thing on that platform is a big part of what's going on now. Or not advertising, but the heat button, and then the advertising on the other platform. So we also had Schellenberger, of course, still coming off the testimony that he gave a couple days ago in Congress, all about Hogwarts School of Misinformation and the PSYOP people that were hired by more or less the offshoots of the Obama administration to prevent 2016, and saying that we need to do this type of manipulation, this type of censorship. So Schellenberger here writes that we discovered DHS employees, so he was on Fox yesterday, employees volunteering to use PSYOPs and disinformation tactics against the American people. They blamed the social media platforms for Trump's election victory in 2016. So they used tactics developed abroad by the US military and turned them against the American people. They use these tactics in order to change the conversation online and engage in mass censorship, which is what we saw on the Twitter files, the Facebook files, and of course is now part of Missouri versus Biden, which we've been covering for a long time, the Missouri versus Biden case, and we will continue to cover it for all of you. James Baker, the FBI's former general counsel who worked in the same role at Twitter, overrode the company's recommendations to censor the New York Post story about the Hunter Biden laptop. What we saw was an effort of existing FBI agents and former FBI officials to spread disinformation about the Hunter Biden laptop and say outright to the American people that it was a Russian hack and leak operation. Now, remember all of this, because what we're talking about today and our theme is the blackmail. Now, remember a couple of weeks ago, right? I remember a couple of weeks ago, we covered those stories where they said, oh, all these high-level American government officials and elected officials are going to whorehouses and partying, and who knows what's going on over there. So this story appears in the newspaper. No names are named. But suddenly, the next day, the Congress, Republicans and Democrats, vote to give the FBI a new, $300 and something, $400 and something million headquarters. All right, that happened out in the daylight in front of all of us, right? An article planted saying that all of these people had dirt on them because they've been going to the whores, and then suddenly all kinds of money for the FBI, because everybody knows. Who doesn't love giving the FBI money, right? They're so great. We got to give them a new headquarters. They say, oh, their poor old headquarters has rats in them, right? Well, in the real world, most people would say, you're in the FBI, fucking sit with the rats, you son of a bitch. I think you could get a vote in America, and 90% of the people at this point, 90% of the people would say, fuck you, FBI agents, rot with the rats. You're not getting a new fucking headquarters, right? Most people out there can't afford food these days, right? They're still eating, causing inflation. So, what's the will and appetite out there to give hundreds of millions of dollars to the fucking FBI? It's zero. It's zero, right? Democrat too. They want to defund the police, don't forget, right? That worked for them. And I agreed with it at the time. That was the best idea they ever had. That's the best idea out of Black Lives Matter, was defund these police, right? So, and by police, I mean the FBI, right? So we have a situation where the FBI is clearly extorting people, clearly running blackmail rings. And this is what J. Edgar Hoover did, right? We know that. That's a indisputable historical fact, that the person who started the FBI was a blackmailer, right? He did that. He was a blackmailer. So we've got a situation where we understand the blackmail is at scale. We can see it, and we're going to get to be able to deal with it. Now, go back to the advertisers, right? So the good news here is that the beautiful United States of America, and their wonderful federative body, and the founding fathers and their great gift to the world, with the decentralized power that is the United States of America. The great state of Texas is suing Pfizer about the vaccines. And it doesn't matter about the case. It's discovery. It's discovery that's important. Discovery is going to be everything when it comes to 2024. Discovery in Missouri versus Biden, which I think Bitcoin Magazine should enjoin, right? I think we should become amicus in this case. With the Fed Now thing with the T-shirts, because here's my trap that I want to lay, right? I think it'd be clever. We wouldn't work. We wouldn't be able to enjoin and become amicus. Amicus means a friend of the court in a case that's relevant to other people in the court. So in this case, we believe we were censored, or at least had chilling effects from the Federal Reserve. So by saying we're the same as Missouri versus Joe Biden, we could say we're a friend of the court and we have skin in this game. Now, the only defense the Federal Reserve can use, do you know what it is? We're not the government, which is our point, right? So I would love to hear the Federal Reserve defend themselves in a way that would state to the planet what they actually are, right? A banking cartel. So, no, we're not a federal institution. We're a banking cartel. We can censor people. Don't worry. I want them to say it publicly. And the simulation shall deliver this to us. I believe we will get an instance where the low IQ members of the Federal Reserve will say, no, you can't. We're not censoring you. We're not even the government. It would just be glorious. Please, simulation, if you are listening to us, Jesus, everybody, please deliver the truth to the Federal Reserve, where they get to make the public case that they are not the government. And to save themselves, they have to convince the American public of what they truly are, a banking cartel. So we're going to get there, right? We're going to get there. All right. That's about all I got for today, guys. Let me see if I've got anything else. X, Elon Health. I guess, yeah, I do want to mention this about Peter McCormick. I put him in my show notes. So the logic around the ad boycott currently on X, right? So there is a slight counterpoint, and Peter McCormick brought it up. So I think we should address it because it's the first sort of counterpoint that made sense to me. So we got this chick. What's her name? Oh shit, we should talk about Newsom for a second too. So this lady says that talking about Walmart, right? So Walmart now. And it turns out, I guess, that Walmart, speaking of, I also had one there. Speaking of Walmart, it turns out that there is a Hunter Biden connection to the chairman of Walmart. I had the notes here. Don't know what I fucking did with them because my note thing sucks today. Let me see where those were. Still not updated. Motherfuckers. Here it is. 1 second. I tried to send all the images in another way and made it worse. I have doubles of everything now. Absolutely retarded. Oh, yeah, here we go. No, that's not it. I don't fucking know where I put it. I don't know where I put it, guys. It's not here. Anyway, there is a connection between Walmart guy and the Bidens. So there you go. But here's the logic, right? So people asking about the pulling out of advertisements, but not doing so on places like TikTok. And so this girl, Catherine Brodsky, says, do you think, asking like, why would they do it to this one and not others? McCormick says, no, I think most of these have idiots. He had two. Anyway, he just says that the ads on Twitter are shit and they're not efficient and expensive. So he explains it as just people could not go on X because it sucks for advertisers, right? But he doesn't say that's the reason why they're actually not doing it. He goes, that is legitimate. You could have a point of view where a marketing team could say X is kind of shit right now, right? Not targeted. They're not sophisticated compared to, I don't know, Facebook or Google ads. I don't know anything about the ad business. So I don't know the difference there. I think McCormick does because he buys a lot of ads and probably understands that. So I don't. But what he does say, right, it's true that it could be. He goes, no, I think that most of these people have idiots buying their ads and don't know how ineffective they are. And so that he says they're not smart enough to even know that X ads aren't good enough, right? He goes, it probably is just the virtue signaling. So I would agree with McCormick's assessment there. I think McCormick has that one right on. The other piece, and this is just because we're talking about Newsom again. So go back to the debate 2 nights ago. Newsom probably did win in the end. I know yesterday, the way I said it, like if you watch the debate, DeSantis pumped him and pounded on him and was funnier and all that. But here's the thing. Democrats will never watch that, right? They're just gonna be like, wow, Gavin went over there and then just lied. Right, like there was a line where DeSantis was like, "Everyone's moving from California to Florida." He's like, "No, they're not. They're moving the other way." Come on, it's pretty good to be that like sociopathic of a liar. Powerful, right? Very powerful. And that came up on the show. Tucker Carlson talked about that on the All In Pod. He says, one thing I know for a fact about Gavin Newsom is he has the capacity to beat a lie detector test. Gavin Newsom's palms don't sweat. His respiration doesn't increase. His body temperature doesn't change. Nothing changes in Gavin Newsom when he lies to your face. And there are not a lot of people like that. Okay, so he did have an ad agency. Okay, there you go. Yeah, no, he knows. Yeah, so then, yeah, there, good. So he's probably an expert on what's going on. So I think he had the right take on it, right? So the Newsom thing is true, right? But here's the thing where the blackmail becomes important again, right? And this is some glorious stuff. There's people, everyone talking about it, that there was someone who committed a crime recently, that Gavin had commuted their sentence, and it was like murder, and he got him out in like 5 months or something. And there's a few of these cases. Jack Ruby is one of them, right? Where politicians pluck people who have legal trouble in order to blackmail them. So it looks like Gavin Newsom has been doing this at the same scale that LBJ once did it. So I believe, of course, they're going to try the switch around with Newsom, right? But again, what I said, right? It's please allow Newsom to rise in the same way that I predicted Justin Trudeau could be the person who absolutely destroys left-wing thought intellectually in the world. And I think he did it. I think my prediction in 2014, when I used to have an office across the hall from Justin Trudeau, and I had older brother friends and everyone who knew him growing up. I have a lot of context of Justin Trudeau. And I said he's going to win, but he is the stupidest person to ever rise to this level, that he will be such a cataclysmic failure that he will shift the Overton window on Earth because of his failure and because he would become such a laughingstock. So I made that prediction in 2014 publicly. I said it publicly to people. Right? I gave a speech about it in Ottawa. And I think I actually made the prediction in 2014, sorry, in 2012, like when he really just first took power. I predicted he would win to become the prime minister, but would be such a failure that he could destroy his party. He could destroy that vein of thought globally. And I think he's done it, right? Now, that's just the intellectual part. He's such a failure intellectually. The other part, the corruption, I think Gavin Newsom can do that, right? I think Gavin Newsom is a textbook case of inheriting the blackmail system in order to have dirty agents working for you. And this would be natural to happen in a place like California because it is only a Democrat stronghold and it's Democrats versus Democrats. And that creates incestuous stupidity and weird little fiefdom Game of Thrones things where jealousy and ego and all this stuff become way more important, which means you need more of these useless blackmail people in order to compete. So I think, and they're not going to be able to hide it, I think Gavin Newsom is going to move forward, except his closet is the most filled with scummy criminals that you're ever going to find. And he himself is not going to be able to defend himself. He is the typical vision of a privileged white kid. And so luckily, the censorship industrial complex has paved the way. They've persuaded everyone to hate Gavin Newsom, and it's going to happen, and it's going to be glorious. It's going to be glorious, guys. We're going to love it. So that's all I got. Newsom, I'm not an American, but isn't that the guy who looks Gen X like Patrick Bateman? You are indeed correct, Winsome Hacks. He is indeed. He looks like a criminal, like he looks like a villain. And people say Patrick Bateman. I say the Joker. I think he looks like the Joker without makeup. I've said that for a little while now. He's the Joker without makeup, which is just perfect. Right? It's just perfect. All right. We got a lot of comments here. I'll read a couple of these. Space drop for the printer. Indeed. Didn't he also... the world's richest men. Women are divorcees. Poor people get bribed. Welfare, college loans. Rich people get blackmailed. Yep. He was close. Hey, everyone saw that Coinbase ad yesterday. Wasn't that good? Yeah, amazing. He was close to finishing sentence just to add more time instead of going free in a couple of years. Yeah. Tucker needs to keep doing his work. He will. Yeah, he's not going. They're gonna have to kill him too. I think the RNC might pull something to make a galley candidate. Trump runs their party and tags RFK for VP. Yeah, it looks like. No, I don't think RFK is going to be the VP, Matt. I think RFK could run the CIA. I think he could be the AG. Trump's going to need bipartisan capital punishment stuff, right? So. He's going to have to include Democrats in his space drop list. So I think he's going to need, in important ways, the legal signature of someone like RFK to drop Hotez and these fucking people from space. There's no other way. Bill Barr, right? There you go. You can't just do it like they're doing to Trump with one party. You need to take the mirror of the uniparty and do it, and then it'll be done. All right, that's all I got for today, team. Hope you're doing great. My family's gone to Niagara Falls for the day, so I'll be getting some stuff done here. This is probably the most upset I've seen. Yeah, I mean, that's technically why I got into Apple. I spent so much time hating on the old systems that I had no choice. What I got here, so good. Trump. We all know what it means to be pro-Trump and anti-Trump. Pre-Trump. Oh, this is cool. Scott Adams saying, let me see what he says. Someone just sent this to me. I think it's going to be good. I'd like to introduce a new word into American politics. We all know what it means to be pro-Trump and anti-Trump, but we have a new category I call pre-Trump. The pre-Trumpers are the former Biden voters who are starting to signal their openness to voting for Trump. Some of it is about Trump policies, some of it is because Biden is a national embarrassment, and some of it is because the brainwashing industrial complex and the weaponization of the courts against Trump are completely obvious now. The only way Democrats can stay within the margin of cheating on Election Day is with a different candidate. Democrats also know Newsom is basically the poor man's Trump, and that's their best play. Yeah, true. All right, team. Peace. Have a great day.